Morning, everyone. Welcome to the iplicit Finance Automation webinar, Making the Complex Simple. And that's what we're looking to achieve and demonstrate today. The session will be with myself, Luke McKenna. I'm a Senior Business Development Manager here at iplicit, and also Guy Burton, a Senior Solutions Consultant. Guy will be going through all of the product elements in a couple of moments when we dive into what we can do with automation. So in terms of the agenda today, I'll go through a little introduction, who iplicit are, what we do, set the table, if you like, in terms of what we are as a solution and a company. Then we'll talk a little bit about the value of automation, again, just high level, and then we'll dive straight into the product with Guy. Next slide, please, Guy. So in terms of iplicit, who we are, what we do, this is a really nice visualization of where we sit within the market. So we move a lot of customers on smaller SME solutions like QuickBooks and Xero or legacy solutions onto the iplicit platform. We would regard ourselves as a mid-market, a best-in-class mid-market solution. And this visualization will show the difference between an SME and an enterprise large ERP solution. Now, it's important to look to the far right-hand side of the graphic and see the high and long implementation costs versus the low costs of something that's an off-the-shelf solution, and where we sit in the middle of that. But we do have ERP enterprise level functionality, but just at a much more consumable price point. An average of 16 days to implement, that's 16 costed days, typically over 2 to 3 months of an average project lifecycle. Next slide, please, Guy. So don't want to steal Guy's thunder too much in terms of the functionality that we'll showcase today. For example, the unlimited GL analysis, you will see that throughout the product. That essentially means unlimited tracking codes or dimensions, how you can slice and dice data and get to a real granular level of information on the back end of your reporting. Automation, of course, that's the heart of the topic today and what we're going to show you. A multi-company environment, so iplicit's fantastic at consolidating entities. Everything's on one platform. You'll see a little bit of that today, but it's great for small or even larger groups where you want to pull together information, do all of the eliminations and produce group reports very quickly. Flexible workflows, we'll dig into that a little bit. So that isn't just monetary values. It could be on a number of areas within the system. That's great for compliance and audit purposes. Integrations and APIs, we'll finish off with some of that today. But just to say, there's an open API, broad strokes, you can integrate with anything that makes sense to fit within the finance function. And iplicit is a fully multi-currency product. Next slide, please, Guy. So in terms of automation itself, I thought it would be useful to actually give a quote, if you like, from a recent conversation that I had. So it's just a direct quote from when we were talking about a number of different things within finance software. So I asked a pretty standard question, I would say, and that was, what does success look like for you in a new finance system? And I'm going to read this verbatim because I thought it was just the perfect summary of what automation is and the value it can offer. So my biggest frustration is that highly skilled and experienced colleagues are currently drowning in very manual, time-consuming work and simply don't have the bandwidth to offer as much value as they could to the business. Now, the reason that resonated with me so much is the answer to that is automation. They were spending huge amounts of time doing things like month ends or splitting out subscription invoices over 12 months. So a large invoice comes in and then manually splitting that out over a 12-month period, or even manually approving some of the transactions. So literally pen and paper and then having to go through, add those into the system. And it was just very clunky. And as the quote says, highly skilled, experienced members of the finance team were really weighed down doing things that didn't really kind of take advantage of their capabilities, and they couldn't offer as much value to the business or do anything particularly strategic. So that was the #1 barometer of success they wanted out of a new finance solution. And we believe that we can demonstrate today that the answer to that is automation. So with that being said, I'll hand over to Guy and we'll show you exactly what we can do in iplicit.
Thank you, Luke. Hi, everyone. So what we've got on the topics and the agenda for today, in terms of taking a look at the software, as Luke says, we want to, we've made it our ambition, our desire in iplicit to try and eliminate as many of those manual tasks as we can. So we'll take you through some of our month-end automations that we've got that's ever expanding as well. We'll take a look at some of the workflows and approvals that again happen automatically as things happen in iplicit. We'll take a look at things like billing and revenue recognition, a bit of intercompany, and then we'll talk about live currency feeds, bank feeds as we go through as well, and intelligent bank recs. And automation is also important for us in terms of not just the information that's in iplicit, but also getting information into iplicit. So the fact that we have our extensive set of APIs, so to integrate to any of your other operating or business systems, those APIs can get information into iplicit without having to manually key that in, amend that in, or type that in. And also those APIs can also pass information back out to your other business systems should you need it. So they're the topics for today. That's enough PowerPoint for the time being. This is iplicit for those of you who've never seen it before. Automation, we also extend out to, we think, the delivery of information. So whether it's graphical representations that are automatically updated by the transactions that are coming into the system and that are available on demand to any of the consumers, any of the stakeholders of your finance information across the organization, we believe that they should be able to get access to the information they need automatically and on demand. So they can interact with our graphs and charts as well. They can click on things, they can download data into it if I'm not timed out on my graph or chart. But being able to get to that information as much as possible and as conveniently as possible, which includes the ability to access that information on mobile devices. Some of our month-end automations, and our automations are extensive, and we'll talk through those in a minute. But there might be something as those usual month-end processes, your accruals, your prepayments. So if I go through, maybe I put on a prepaid invoice or an invoice I need to prepay. In this case, it's a bit of insurance. So iplicit wants an invoice number for me. But you notice on the line details, our automations mean at data entry. So when these invoices are being entered into iplicit or if they're being integrated into iplicit, we can set prepayment schedules. So in this case, maybe I wanted to do it straight line over 12 months. Maybe I wanted to do it daily over 12 months and pro rata it. Maybe it was on different periods. All of these, or even on a specific date, we'll come on to those in a minute. But how I want that, in this case, that particular line to be prepaid. So rather than me having to do anything, all I'm doing is nominating how I'd like that to be prepaid. And then I can tell the automation when I want that to start. So maybe I'll start it from the beginning of the month. As I submit that, that's when the automations kick in. So me as a user, all I need to do is enter that transaction into iplicit. That will automatically, again, be picked up by our workflow. So our authorizations will have sent out emails. It will send out notifications within iplicit to anyone who needs to approve that particular transaction. And once that's gone through, that's when the automations will kick in as far as that prepayment is concerned. And you'll notice that iplicit's built a prepayment schedule for me. It's detailed that prepayment schedule for me, and because I asked it to start at the beginning of the month, it's also done its first release of that transaction. So if I have a look at the post into the GL, for anyone who's interested, then it's taken that invoice, it's paid it to, I said it was an insurance invoice, but the automation's picked that up and says, hang on a second, that needs to be prepaid. So it's put that invoice into the balance sheet, and then it's already released out the first increment of that for me as well. That's how we think automation should happen across the system. And whether or not it's prepayments, that might also affect my accruals. Maybe it's coming up to that time. So it is actually, well, we're at the 5th. Maybe we're a bit late for that. Our automation center in iplicit is where we configure, or you can configure all the automation processes and how you will like iplicit to handle those automations for you. So they will cover our prepayments, but they'll also cover our our accruals as well. So I can define how I'd like iplicit. I can put in different criteria about how I want to run that automation. And for my, unlike my prepayments, for my accruals, maybe I want to put a bit of control in there. So I don't want it to run automatically as soon as an invoice hits iplicit or as soon as an order hits or a commitment hits iplicit. I want to do that myself. And I could go on a schedule because we've got an automatic scheduler in iplicit. iplicit will go through, and if I go into my period end area, I can see the accruals iplicit's created for me. And it's not just creating the accrual itself. We're also reversing that out on the following day of the next month I can consolidate my accruals into one great big accrual if I wanted to. And I can also configure iplicit to work differently on different types of transactions. So the way that I accrue for my purchase orders or goods received notes, you've got the control within the automation center to define how you'd like to manage your accrual process across the entire organization or organizations, because remember that iplicit is a single system for all the companies, as Luke mentioned earlier on. But our automation, all I've done is posted, or someone's placed a purchase order in this case. iplicit's recognized that, says, right, I'm going to create you an accrual. Not only will it create my accrual, it will also link it through to the originating PO, so or purchase invoice if it's maybe it's an invoice that's not yet been approved at the end of the month, but I still want to account for that. But iplicit will have also automatically reversed that out on the following day of the next month as well. So we're trying to take some of those manual tasks, the things that you might be doing in spreadsheets or having to export information or just go and reconcile information. We want the system to be able to take the bulk of that manual process so that then you can oversee that. You can make sure you're happy with those. These could again go through, even those accruals could go through an authorization, a checking process. But it's a lot easier for me to reconcile, which I can also do on screen in the system. But automations might fall around other things like automatic foreign exchange gains and losses, maybe on a foreign invoice. So it may be if I've got in this case I've got a euros invoice. Let's go and take that in. Just post that. That invoice goes through. Again, someone will get a notification automatically that we've got an invoice to be approved. I might approve that invoice. In this case, let's go and approve it. Because that's a foreign invoice, when I come to pay that, they've got automations against my payments. So is the exchange rate against the euro going to go up or down today? Let's say it's going to go down. When I submit that, iplicit will automatically work out my foreign exchange gain or loss on that particular transaction and post that through, or let me approve that for posting, as well as the automations around period end. I might want to do some revaluations on my foreign currency, because we've got full foreign currency. We're a full foreign currency system within a multi-currency system within iplicit, and included in that, again, from an automations point of view, if I go and have a look at my exchange rates, we can set up as many different types of exchange rates across 190 plus different currencies around the globe, and that also includes cryptocurrencies. So if I want to see what the latest price of Bitcoin is, that's automatically been filled in for me, completed over our APIs through to a currency feed, in this case from Fixer. But we have other feeds are available. So again, it's just another one of those tasks. One of my favorite tasks, this is quite a sad task really, but is penny corrections in the sales and purchase ledgers. So I can ask iplicit to go through at the end of the month and get rid of everything, any small incremental balances that might have come across by supplier, us overpaying a supplier maybe, or a debtor not paying an invoice in full. And if I've got lots of little incremental ones, I can build an automation rule that will just go through and clear those down for me, so I can keep things tidier. One of those tasks that's are really manual, but also, is it worth me doing it on a day-to-day basis or a monthly basis? Those automations might also stick around. If we go and have a look at the automation center itself, the way that we've designed automations is we want you to be able to monitor and manage those automations. So whether or not it's how you capitalize the fixed assets, how we work out depreciation, do you want us to work out disbursements on cash expenses if someone's using our expense module, creating an expense that needs to be dispersed to a customer, we can do that automatically. Automatic payment runs, automatic intercompany transactions, we'll come on to those in a second, multi-company invoices, those penny corrections, prepayments. But any of our automations, the idea behind automations is they can sit across an extensive range of the software, but we want you to be able to configure it. All of our customers use the same version of iplicit. We don't bespoke the software for anybody, but we want you to be able to control how you want iplicit to reduce those manual tasks to suit how your organization works and needs to operate. That extends to things like auto capitalization. So I've got auto capitalization rules. So again, you define those capitalization rules. What do you want iplicit to look at? What do you want it to pull out of the P&L, out of an expense code, out of a balance sheet additions code, or even an expense code? So anything that goes to computer equipment, if it's over these values, maybe I want that to be automatically added into our fixed asset register. Set up those rules. Again, it's saving the finance team time, but if I just create a purchase invoice that's got a bit of information on it. So in this case, I'm building or buying a laptop, a monitor, and a headset. Again, put in an invoice number. My auto capitalization automation kicks in. Post that invoice, that gets dealt with, but in my asset register, iplicit will automatically add that in, and the automations won't just deal with the asset itself, they will deal with potentially any non-capital items in there. Our fixed asset register automatically captures your additions, we manage your disposals of information, we manage obviously the depreciation that goes onto those different laptops. So if I click on that laptop, against that, all I've done is just someone's posted a purchase order or a purchase invoice. iplicit's worked out what that depreciation schedule is. It's created that schedule for me, and again, as the time fits, then iplicit will automatically, as part of maybe a month-end process, or it could be even a daily process, to automatically calculate and post that depreciation schedule for you. And remember, we can also deal with tangible, intangible assets and the non-capital items as well. So if you want to use the asset register to again help you track assets, where they're located, who owns that asset, has it been transferred, together with all of the different movements of that particular asset as they go through as well. So again, amortisation and depreciation, and also the addition and disposal of assets we can handle through automations. Going back, we also have an extensive set of automations that sit around intercompany information. So iplicit, just for completeness, we are a single system with multiple legal entities. So you can have as many entities, as many companies in iplicit. iplicit will understand from an intercompany point of view what companies can trade with what type of transactions can trade, and that's where the automations kick in. You build automation rules. Again, we have lots of these out of the box, but you can configure those and tweak those in different ways, shapes, and forms. Those automations can do things like maybe we've got a company that's we've got a template for this one, I think, save you having to watch me. We'll do that intercompany. This intercompany transaction, I'm in company A, it's selling to, and again, it will read through that intercompany matrix to decide which other entity within the group it's trading with. When I submit that, as that goes through, iplicit will take that automation, read that through. As it created that sales invoice against company A, what it will also have done is in company B, it will have created me that purchase invoice and sent that through to the expense ledger in company B and through the creditors ledger, and also through all of my intercompany loan accounts. So the way that automations work, especially for all my intercompany transactions, iplicit will post those transactions. I just need to create that transaction once, whether it's a cash transfer, whether it's a journal, whether it's an intercompany sale, whether it's a purchase. If I've got one company that's paying things on behalf of other companies, iplicit will not just create the transactions, but also create those intercompany movements as well for me through the different loan accounts that you can all control and configure. And because we have all that information in one place, that also means that I've got my automations around my consolidations. I've got live consolidations across the group in whatever way, shape, or form that I want to present that information, with the ability to drill down into information, with the ability to analyze that in different ways, shapes, and forms. And we've also got automatic intercompany balance reconciliation screens as well. So again, rather than me having to print out lots of nominals, print out lots of reports to get those different balances and make sure everything's gone through to each other, I can get live access to that information. In addition to which, because iplicit's creating all those intercompany transactions for me, I want to take a look at my consolidated accounts, but maybe I only wanted to look at the accounts for these particular companies. Maybe I wanted to get rid of all of my elimination transactions, and because iplicit understands what elimination transaction is, because it's posted them for you, I can hide those eliminations, and it will take those eliminations out of the P&L, out of the balance sheet, and I can also maybe even identify just those elimination transactions. So again, all part of hopefully us being able to provide a lot more a lot more automation to your finance system, but also to give you more time to focus on the more value-added tasks, as Lee was mentioning right at the beginning. Those automations and integrations and the fact that iplicit is going to create and post those transactions for me also extends to things like live bank feeds. So we have our bank feeds that we can pick up from not just any UK bank. We also have banks that we can integrate with and pull statements in from around the world, and banks and credit cards and payment cards as well. That's going to come into my bank reconciliation. My bank reconciliation also has a host of automations built around it. So when my bank reconciliation, I've got my bank statement on the left-hand side, I've got the cash book out of iplicit. I can search through any of these areas, but what I can also do is I can build sets of rules. So iplicit will have automatically gone through that and posted based on those different rules and calculations. Those rules and calculations can also be we can be quite flexible in terms of what we want to look at. I can have tolerances in there. I can say I want to match this bit from the bank statement through to this bit on the cash book and choose the fields that are coming through from the different fields from your different banking providers. And iplicit will also, as it goes through, allow it to suggest things for you as well. So I think this matches this. I think this might match one of these 9 transactions. But I need a human to tell me which one it is. We can also automate the creation of different transactions that will come through from the bank statement as well. So again, all without you having to manually come out of the bank rec, go into the cash book, create a transaction. I can even allocate receipts to sales ledger accounts, invoices to purchase ledger accounts. All of that sort of automation we can bring through into the system as well. From a live reporting point of view, obviously we've got automatic access to these screens, and then whether or not I'm looking at this, whether I'm looking at budgets or forecasts, I might be looking at that sort of information within the system. I've got live access to that information. Again, we can automatically upload budgets from spreadsheets. We can enter them into iplicit. We can put controls in place. iplicit can be automatically sending out schedules and reports out to other users. But we've also extended automation because lots of our customers like a bit of Excel. Any information can be downloaded into Excel, but also we've added a iplicit add-in into Excel so that then I can, within Excel, if I just open that up again. We've got an add-in for Excel where I can open up an Excel spreadsheet, and from Excel, I can then log in to iplicit. What iplicit then does is it automatically provides Excel to access to all of the inquiries, all of the data that my user has got access to from within the finance system. So I could even start with a blank spreadsheet and ask Excel to go and get my creditors ledger. I've got the same filters as I've got to automatically filter that information. What this is doing though, is this isn't just building and exporting data out of the finance system into a spreadsheet. This is now creating an automatic link between this workbook, this worksheet, and the finance system. So I can do whatever sort of configuration, whatever filtering, whatever slicing and dicing of that data within Excel, and then that information is then provided on an ongoing basis to anyone who's got access to this spreadsheet, and the security behind it can just refresh that data. In addition to that, what we can also build is more granular automations. Those automations also extend to be able to do automatic calls from a cell on a cell-by-cell basis out to from Excel to iplicit. So I can ask Excel to go to my general ledger in iplicit and go and get an account code description from that nominal. Autofill that, and I can do the same for figures. So I can create a lot of pixel perfect. So I go and get some amounts. That amount, I might want to get some flexibility in there as well. So I might want to choose one of the companies I've got in the group rather than the consolidated view. Choose an accounting period. Choose which nominal I want to go and get. I've now got a live set of accounts. So my management accounts at month end can be produced in a format that we're comfortable with, in a format that's presentable across the organization. but then are producing that information automatically from the finance system. And it's also available on demand throughout the accounting periods as well. You don't have to wait to month end to get an up-to-date or a reasonable up-to-date view of that information. That's all down to how much information we've got within the finance system and how that information has been pulled into the finance system. That automation can also extend out through our APIs, of which we have an extensive set. And these are available, and our APIs allow any of our inquiries, any of the screens that you've seen me show you in iplicit, to be called over those APIs. So if I want to automatically link iplicit or your finance data through to Power BI, through to a Tableau, through to other business operating reporting systems that you might be using across the organization. Again, all without me having to export data out of the finance system and put into the reporting tools of your choice. And finally, those automations, just to finish off a bit where we started from, we also have automations to cover off deferred income as well. So if I just very quickly create a deferred income invoice. This one's got a bit of license fees on it. Very similar to prepayments, right? We saw right at the very beginning. We apply that same technology, the same part of it, and again, it's all about us having to use, rather than having to reinvent the wheel, I'm taking that prepayment idea basically, and we're applying that to our income. So I can now say to iplicit, this sales invoice, actually, this information needs to be distributed over or released over a straight line. Maybe I needed to do, maybe that's for a future date. Maybe I've got some information that's for a specific event or a project that might not be happening until the end of October. So I build all that information into iplicit. As I submit that, that's when the automations kick in automatically and build me a whole deferred income profile. And it's even automatically released me the first bit of that journal as well. Okay. And then I can build all of that information into some beautiful reports and schedules and graphical information that's going to be as live. That information, that deferred information might have been coming through from our CRM system, from our donor management system, from our sales and operations systems, passing that information automatically with that granular bit of how that information needs to be deferred. iplicit can manage that, and it also gives me the ability to report and inquire on that across the organization as well. So I can refer to what we've ordered so far down to an individual line level, an individual contract, an individual invoice level, and allow iplicit to manage that for me. And then I can slice and dice that data up thanks to iplicit's unlimited analysis levels. And that, in just under half an hour, is how iplicit manages automations. And then just for completeness, these slides are going to be available. We're going to have a Q&A in a second. If anyone's got any questions, feel free to add them into the questions or the chat area as well. So we use those automations to help a wide range of companies and customers across lots of different sectors, whether it's a non-profit sector, whether it's a financial or tech sector. Our customer base is extensive because we've just got the one system, but we've added as much configuration into iplicit to be able to suit various different sectors as well. So we're nice and generic for that. We've had some lovely feedback from customers. Customer satisfaction is so important to us. And these are just quotes from different customers. Again, you'll feel free. All of these are available through the iplicit website. And then, have we got any questions come through, Luke?
Just we do, yes, Guy. Yeah, we've got quite a few. Okay. Firstly, this one's quite vague. How much time would it be needed to set up? Now, I'm not sure if they mean the actual automations or the solution itself. I said at the top of the presentation, 16 days on average to actually set up iplicit implementation, training, user acceptance testing, and so on. But Guy, if you could give a steer on how long it would take to set up some of these automations, that would be great.
The automations will show you, again, we want you to be able to manage those automations on an ongoing basis. To actually set up an automation itself, there's a load of templates that come out of it. Let me just come out of the spreadsheet for a second. Within the automation center, we set up a lot of these out of the box, but you can configure and tweak those automations. So for me to be able to, again, copy one of our existing automations, you might want to tweak that for a different set of, different type of transaction maybe. You want to do some different mapping when you're doing an intercompany transaction. If you've got overseas operations, I want to turn that invoice, that UK GBP sales invoice, might need to become a euro purchase invoice. You can do all of that as part of the automations. So you have that control. You can build in whatever criteria, which entities you want that to look after, different automations across different companies. We don't want you to have to come back to us to manage those automations. So in terms of setting up the automations, once we've shown you how to do that, they literally just take minutes to create. There's a new one. Choose what I want the automation behind. Choose what documents I want to do it on. Choose what I want to create. And that, once I've built in some criteria, put in at that. There, I've already got that one in use, but if I call that automation 2. There you go. That's how long it takes to set one up.
Very good. Next question, how do you
Yeah.
produce the month-end reports?
There's a whole, again, automations to do that. We can build, we have as part of our month-end process, the ability to take my month-end reports. We've got obviously the live screens and analysis within iplicit to be able to do that, but also any of our reports can also be built as schedules as well. So I can take any set of reports. So I'll take age creditors, for example. I can turn those inquiries that we call them, which is the sets of data basically, and turn those into a conventional PDF Excel type report, and then I can build these into schedules. So I can say to iplicit, I could run these on demand, but I could also say to iplicit, once we finish the month-end period, I want you to then go and create all of these and then email those out to a group of people or save them to a particular place. But obviously we've also then got those reporting packs, those live links into Excel as well. So we can publish the more pretty, maybe, for want of a better description, management accounts out, and those worksheets can include that granular, your schedules, your that I want to produce with the data live fed automatically out of iplicit into those Excel workbooks as well.
Great.
Okay.
There is a question on pricing. The answer to that is it's dependent on things like user volume, number of entities, some of the functionality. So what I'll do is I'll drop you a note straight after this and we can have a chat and go through kind of an illustrative price. But yes, in terms of the technical questions, can you
Sure.
upload Excel data into iplicit?
Yes, you can upload any data. Our importing tools will import anything from anywhere. So whether or not it's a spreadsheet, it's a journal and a spreadsheet, whether or not it's sales data that's come in XML format or JSON format or whatever, or even a CSV file. So we can take all of that information and import that in from a spreadsheet base if you wanted to, or from other different systems as well. So we'll import from as many of the most common transaction types as well as obviously doing the APIs integration as well.
Thanks, guys. So a question on the fixed asset automation. Can the threshold be set in different currencies other than base?
Yes, of course. I shouldn't say of course it can. Yes, it can. So again, when I'm setting up my auto capitalization rules, I can say I want it to be in this amount of sterling. I can have it for this amount of euros or whatever other currencies that you want to report on. So just all part of the auto capitalization rules that we set up, or which you set up.
Great. Are you able to set up different departments within the entities so you can run analysis down to that level? So
yeah, sure can. We love a bit of analysis in iplicit. And so that's where our unlimited analysis levels come in. So whether I'm looking at information, in this case, let's just go back and have a look at all of this. So against your nominal codes, we can have an unlimited, I'll just quickly show you rather than talk about it. We build chart of account, or you build chart of account rules, which basically means whether you want 6 levels of analysis, you want 7 levels of analysis, you can create your own analysis codes if you think of it like that. So maybe I wanted a bit of an asset type and a continent and a region and a country and all that type of thing. So I could have 10 levels of analysis that might go across this set of nominal codes. You might want to apply that across the whole nominal. And those departments or cost centers, we can have those drop downs. You can have those pre-filtered lists. You can make them mandatory, all that type of thing. So I can also define them as well. So these cost centers are only available to this group of people and things like that from a data entry point of view. So
Makes sense.
I could have just said yes to that one, shouldn't I?
No, it's fine. It's good to get a bit more detail in there. How does iplicit support external audit?
We've got, so we are a bit passionate about auditability because we have quite a few ex-accountants working with us. And in iplicit, so we automatically date and timestamp everything in iplicit. We have lots of security in terms of user permissions and user group permissions. So we not only security on the transactions, but also in terms of what different users can do. So we can really ring fence and lock down what people can do from a segregation of duty point of view. We have our workflows that then can pass through your automations and authorization processes. Our authorization processes can get to be quite granular. We can do things, automate authorization down to line level if you want to. You can have those segregation of duties. So I might be able to put on a purchase invoice, for example. If I put on a credit note, that needs to go through to Luke for approval, as well as having automatic distribution rules that are to push those workflows through. And in addition to that, because we date and timestamp everything, we also have lots of audit inquiries in terms of checks. It might be checking things like bank balances. It might be doing, what do we call it? Or fraud checks, for example. So this one will go through and check which suppliers don't have a bank account, which suppliers have the same bank account number, that type of thing. And there are extensive other controls in iplicit, so things like changing bank details, they can go through an approval process on your sales and purchase ledger accounts as well. So we keep track of who's changed things and what across the system. So hopefully an auditor's delight.
Thank you. Quite a few more questions coming through. So I should be able to answer a couple. Jump in if you want to add to it, Guy. Which payroll systems integrate with iplicit? So the answer to this is the open API. We can integrate with any cloud-based payroll system. We've integrated with a lot depending on different client needs. So we wouldn't specifically influence for you to go with a certain payroll provider. It's the best one for your organization, and we can then push that data into iplicit via the open API. The next
and also,
one is,
if you've got a non-cloud-based payroll, we can also upload from a file that the payroll system produces as well.
yeah, either I guess a file integration or just a direct CSV import. Next is how many legal entities can be set up within iplicit. So I know our biggest customer has over 260. Is there any limit at all, Guy?
How many do you want? No, there's no limit whatsoever. So you can have 1, you can have 100, you can have 1,000.
Okay. Next is around an audit trail report. Do you have easy access to an audit trail report there, Guy, to show?
Yeah, so there's lots of different audit type reports that we've got in the system. We call them log files as well. So there's also an environment log. You've got a detailed, in this case it's a TB audit. That goes through all of the different transactions, and then it keeps a log, who's authorized that, who's interacted with that transaction, and we keep a detail against each transaction as you go through as well. If transactions, let me just drill down. So we've got drill downs into everything. Every transaction has its own log file as well, extensively. So you can then report who's edited this particular document. I could go and see all the documents that Luke's edited, Luke's created, Luke's authorized, that type of thing as well. So audit trails are extensive, and they're also on any record type in iplicit. So I might be looking at, I can build reports across all of this as well, but maybe looking at a particular supplier. So this is just a different record type rather than a transaction. I'll keep a log who created that transaction. We can have approvals on new customers, new suppliers, all that type of thing as well. I can see here that someone's updated, it was me, updated the bank account details in there as well. So all of that is extensive and logged. And again, I can report on those as part of the audit trails themselves. You can run those, you can give your auditors access to the system. Lots of customers do that as well. And obviously because we're cloud-based, they don't even have to leave their office. They can do all this online. Through our secure login processes, obviously.
Yes. So how easy is it to create monthly consolidation rules, eliminations, and all of the intercompany transactions?
That's all part of the automations. So the rules in terms of how you want those consolidation transactions to come through, whether it's a sale to a purchase, whether it's how you want your journals to produce, That's all controlled by the automations, all done in real time as well. So as soon as that transaction's made, and that also extends out to multi-company invoices, for example, multi-company journals, payment runs. You might do a payment run from company A that's paying suppliers on behalf of companies B, C, and D. Even your VAT returns, if you do group VAT returns, when I produce, say like I'm doing it, when iplicit produces your VAT return, if you need group VAT accounting, let me just show you. This is our iplicit pivot table that's available across the system. If I just drag my legal entity into my pivot, let's just put it at the top so you can see that. So this VAT return's being completed across the group. Again, automatically, I don't need to do anything. It's just as transactions come through, there'll be transactions for the different entities, the different legal entities you've got within the group. When I post that and submit that, because we automatically send it through to HMRC, through to the gateway, so we're fully MTD compliant. But when I do that, iplicit will also have posted all of my intercompany balances at the same time as well once that return gets submitted. So again, live consolidations is what we are trying to do as well. The consolidations will be as up to date as the last transaction, the last journal, or allocation that you've done into the system.
Perfect. Is iplicit compatible with a paperless system, so used for coding, approving supplier invoices and expenses? So I think we probably haven't shown
Sure
the
is.
attachments, have we, in the file management?
Yeah, so you can upload documents into iplicit. We also have partnerships with, whoops, clicked on the wrong button. So any document, if I look for an invoice, any document and any record in iplicit, let me just quickly look at this purchase invoice. You've got a paperclip button in here, so you can either manually upload invoices into iplicit, but we also have our document automation, or AP, accounts payable automations partner, is a company called Lightyear. If you've come across Lightyear before, they're really cool. Invoices go to Lightyear. Lightyear reads the invoice, creates the invoice in iplicit. We send it out for authorization, that type of thing. But Lightyear also checks your bank account. It reconciles supplier statements and all that type of thing as well. And Lightyear works with multiple companies as well.
Thanks, Guy. How does iplicit deal with FX differences on multi-entity and multi-currency differences on month end?
You have different currency rates and types. So each legal entity will have its own base currency. In our exchange rate types, you can have like monthly rates, you can have daily rates, you can have spot rates, you can have rates for a particular contract, and I can apply those. And then if you just bear with me a second, let me just jump into an environment that's got multiple currencies on it. And then on this example, so each entity that I've got in the group is going to have its local version of something, but I can consolidate in whatever currency I want. So my group is set to consolidate in GBP. So I've got a French, an Irish, I've got 2 euro companies basically and a UK company. It's now showing me the local versions of that through the consolidation. Like I say, actually, I want to see that at a different rate type. And the rate types you can assign to nominal codes as well and to companies. So if you've got a specific spot rate maybe against certain intercompany balances maybe or something like that, or a certain contract, I can have that apply to those transactions as well. And I could say to iplicit, that's great, but I wanted to see the whole lot in US dollars. So we hold the originating transaction in whatever the currency of that transaction is, and then we'll consolidate that up into the euro version of it. I haven't got a company rate for US dollars. We've got an average rate for US dollars. No. Default rate for US dollars, maybe. There you go. Okay.
Yep. How does iplicit comply with non-UK entities?
Okay. We have in our chart of accounts, you can have different versions of your chart of accounts, basically. So we have one nominal code list that sits across all the entities in the group, which is structured in a particular way, but you can have different versions of that structure. That structure I've got my nominals rolling up into on the left-hand side. I can have as many different versions of that as I want. So if I wanted that version in, just for example, I wanted that in a US GAAP format, you can have your chart of accounts mapped onto a US GAAP format. So if you've got entities in the group that need to be producing different requirements, different jurisdictions, then they can have that. I can even go down to, look, I've got French chart of accounts here.
Do you
Ooh,
have
la,
the
la.
IFRS in there, Guy? Just another questions around that.
Yeah, we've got some standards in there. We call them, to make it sound more exciting, we call it dynamic account structures. So we've got US GAAP, we've got an IFRS basic one, we've got a DFE one if you're in the education sector, we've got a USALI one, which is all to do with the hotel industry, if you wanted to see that. And you can take any of those as chart of accounts and then map your structure onto the chart of account structure that you define, your nominal codes basically onto that. I can even do different coding structures from different entities if I wanted to onto my single chart of accounts. So I'm quite flexible on that. Hopefully that's
Perfect.
answered the question.
Couple more questions, Guy. So this is an interesting one. How does iplicit deal with duplication of automations? So an example would be company A creates a sales invoice, then company B has a purchase invoice. However, what happens is company B creates the purchase invoice first using the automation to then create the sales invoice in company A. So duplication over the
So
duplication.
who gets there first? So the automations work both ways. So if I create the purchase invoice in company A, it creates the sales invoice in company B. If I create the purchase invoice in company B, it creates sales invoice in company A. So it does it automatically. How, if I stop someone manually doing that, I don't know. I'd have to reconcile it, I suppose. I don't know. They can go through an approval process. I don't know how. I can't stop people from doing that, to rekeying that sales invoice in, but hopefully.
Approval
Oh
would
no,
probably
when they're
be
putting that invoice in, if they obviously the invoice number would be the same as the invoice number that's already implicit's already created as soon as I put that purchase invoice on, and we will stop duplication of invoice numbers. There you go.
brilliant. Yeah. Last question today. Is there a limit on the number of companies in iplicit?
Sorry, just say that one again. Is there a number? Is there?
So just a limited number of entities. So I mentioned earlier our biggest customer is 260, but
Yeah, no, there's no limit on the number of entities. There's no limit on any number of limit on entities, limits on number of transactions. We've got customers who are pushing in hundreds of thousands of transactions a month into implicit, so and
yeah, there
scope
was
for a
another
lot more
question
as
on
well.
transaction volume, I
Yeah, I just
believe.
spotted
So
that one. Yeah,
yeah,
but
there's not a limit.
no limit. And you are also, just to set up a company, just to show you, go into your legal entities, just click on new, and then you give it a code, give it a name, say what currency it's going to, what currency it's based in, what tax authority we'll do. We've got multiple tax jurisdictions in our implicit as well, so you need to handle Angola goods and service tax. That's in there as well.
Fantastic. So just to wrap up, the questions come in again around pricing. So as I said before, we'll drop you a note just to go through things like the number of users you'll be looking at, the type of users. We've got a number of different options around that. So if someone just needs to approve transactions, wouldn't necessarily be a full user, so on and so forth. Some of the functionality, and we'd be very transparent and give illustrative pricing really quickly. And the last one that's just come in is on the number of suppliers the system can handle. So I imagine that's the same answer that we went through on a couple of the other
Yeah,
volume
no
questions.
limit on sales or purchase ledger accounts at all. And because we're a single environment system, you set up your sales and purchase ledger accounts are available across all entities in the group as well. So I've got live, consolidated, aged debtors and creditors stuff in there as well. So you need to set up a supplier once, and that's available to all entities in the group. And I can look at my consolidations. Let's just repivot this one. There you go. That's my consolidated creditors list in there as well. So no limits on that, but you can slice and dice them in lots of different ways, different categorizations, different control accounts. I've got quite a lot of flexibility in there, we hope.
Thank you, Guy. And yeah, just to summarize, thank you everyone for all of the questions today. Lots of really detailed, well thought out questions, and your engagement throughout the session today. And yeah, so there are my details there. The guy has kindly popped up on screen, but I've already mentioned a couple of follow-ups that I'll do straight after this, and then we can take those conversations from there. But certainly any other questions, if you would like to see a bespoke demo specific to your needs, drop me a note and we'll get that set up quickly.
We'll also be sending everyone a copy of the slides. They are downloadable within the download section. There's some case studies in there as well. and the webinar has been recorded, and it'll be available on demand through the iplicit website. So this afternoon, by the time it gets published and put up there. Anyone else, if you need a colleague to, you want to pass that information on to a colleague, or if you just like to rewatch it because there's nothing on Netflix tonight, you can do that. But apart from that, thank you all very much for your time and attention. I hope you found it useful, and check out the website for lots more webinars that are available every month from us as well. Apart from that, thanks everybody. Thank you, Luke.
Thank you very much, Guy. Have a good day, everyone.
Bye.